Good morning, everybody. My name is Ben Martman, and I'm the Director of Electoral Area H, the Diamond North Oyster, and I'm chairing the Governance Select Committee this morning. And I'd just like to make an acknowledgement that we are coming from the traditional and ancestral territories of the Coast Salish and the Nuu-chah-nulth peoples. I'd like to just remind people to please turn electronic devices to mute, or even better, off. And I'd like to start the meeting, Ms. Ferguson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First on the agenda, we have the approval of the agenda.
I have a motion to approve the agenda. Seconder, we do. And all those in favor? Anybody opposed? None opposed? Motion carried. Next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have the adoption of the minutes, and that's the adoption of the April 12th, 2023 Governance Committee meeting minutes.
Thank you very much. Any errors or omissions? Seeing none, can I have a move to approve? Motion one, and a seconder? No seconders? Oh, we got a seconder. All right. All in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, carried. Ms. Ferguson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Next up is public input period.
Anyone for public input? Welcome.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Good to see people here this morning. The weather was so nice, I thought they'd play hooky. The Code of Conduct policy that you've written looks very good. And I think the biggest thing we need to do is have cooperation and teamwork within the board. It's very, very important. I noticed that on 2.14, leadership and collaboration, that you should be positively influencing others. And we have to watch that word influencing, because persuasion. I think it's good that some of the old directors mentor the new directors. But I think in some of the meetings that I've listened to, we've had some of the old directors recommend that they follow the director of the area of what is being discussed in voting. And I think when the collaboration
Point of order,
goes
Mr. Chair.
they're asking people to
Stand by. Your point of order?
I don't think we should be putting words in directors' mouths, putting them down by what they've been saying. This seems very hypothetical.
I would agree with that. Carry on, Mr. Evans, but not around the hypothetical of what directors do.
So on the looking over the leadership, I see that the policy is very extensive, and that will probably save problems in the future, I hope. But I was looking at the local government fact sheets about elected officials' powers. And the power of a single council or board member depends on the ability to persuade the other members of their point of view. A single member does not have the power to bind the municipality or the regional board in any way. The elected official's power is collective and not individual. So, Mr. Chair, I think that we can write all the words we want, but I really believe that leadership is the way to go and to solve all our problems locally if we can. Because when we have to, when the taxpayer has to go out and pay a lawyer to solve these problems, it costs us all. And thank you very much for all your input, and I think that this Code of Conduct policy is very well written. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. Anyone else for public input?
None right now.
And next on the agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Next on the agenda is reports, and we have a report from the Human Resources Division, Code of Conduct for Elected Officials Policy, and you have a recommendation before you.
Thank you, Mr. Pidle.
Chair. Yes, recommendation is simply to adopt the policy as written. Now it's on. The recommendation is to adopt the policy as written. If there are any comments or questions prior to, I'm happy to answer those at this point through the chair.
All right. Anybody wants to speak? Director Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've read through this, and I think everybody's, all the things that we've asked for have been put in there, so I'm quite happy to move the recommendation if this is the right time to do it.
Thank you. And Ellison or Director Nicholson?
Right, so I have three things, and thank you, I agree with Director Wilson that I'm really happy with where this is, but I think there's a couple of things that I would still like to have addressed. One is, the bully and harassment definition, I believe, should include shunning, is one thing. And then the other thing is around the role of the chair, and under the remedy, so I am thinking about a situation where you have a chair that is not, that is part of the part of the problem. I'll just be straight up. So under the remedies, there is no stated remedy to remove a person from the chair position, but there is one for the vice chair. So I think that maybe that has been overlooked. And I was also thinking that I really feel very strongly that we should be trying to resolve things informally. If we have good relationships, we should be able to resolve issues informally. And that to me should be how this code of conduct comes across, that's our expectation, that we work together in a collegial, collaborative way, giving people the benefit of the doubt and trying to work things out. So there could be a situation where you have a chair that is part of this issue, that is part of the problem, and they refuse to go down this informal route. And then I think that it's not clear enough in the code of conduct how a commissioner would deal with that. So I think we have a commissioner, which I think is great because that's a tool to help resolve that problem. But if you had a very problematic chair, I think that it would be very challenging, probably challenging anyway. But so I'm just thinking it needs to be strengthened a little bit around that kind of scenario. But I am quite happy to let that one go, and we can work at that over time, because I know we have a good chair right now and that's not going to be a problem. But I do think that it's something that could happen, and this is about the preventing things, right? Thank you.
Mr. Pidle, you have a comment?
Through the chair, my comments to that are simply that there are remedies that do apply to the chair, correct, and that the chair will not be removed, vice chair will. And those remedies are up to the point of remuneration penalty. And so that is something we could work through in the future.
Director Morrison?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've got a list, so I hope I can go through it. Firstly, I think we're making a mistake by including volunteer commission members in this policy. It's now a 19-page policy, and are we expecting our volunteers to look through, read, and agree to all of the provisions of this policy in advance of being appointed to a Parks Commission or Advisory Planning Commission? I think it's way too far. I'm going to tie that in with a comment at the very end. There's an issue in here where there's been a change from conducting the business conduct their business in a transparent, efficient, accountable, and respectful fashion. It's been changed to themselves. So I have a private life and I have a public life. And this says I have to conduct myself in a transparent, efficient, accountable, and respectful fashion. I will absolutely do that in regards to my public-facing responsibilities. But this is saying that I have to do it in my private life as well, and that's none of anybody's business. So I think we've got an error there. I'll go on to,
Maybe we can just one at a time and
Sure.
Mr. Pidle respond.
I can give them my list.
So, through the chair to Director Morrison, themselves was adjusted at the direction of the committee last board, or last governance meeting, I should say. And that was done as to create clarity around, or not have misconstrued that conduct their own business. So there are, the comments I believe I heard at this table were that there are several folks on the board, on the committee that own their own businesses. And they were concerned about the interference or the misconception that that might be their business and how they conduct their own businesses. So that's why we've adjusted it to themselves.
Thank you, but it doesn't say that, and it applies something very different. I want to address the physical gestures, and I think this document is going to build upon my stone-faced automaton comment at the last meeting. We're going to be stone-faced immobilized automatons if we include things like physical gestures, and that's an opinion of mine. I was talking with Mr. Elzinga about some of the folks that have appeared in the pictures on the wall opposite the back, and they would be some disappointed at the fact that you can't be a demonstrative, emotive person around this table for fear that it might negatively impact somebody sitting opposite or sitting next to you.
Maybe it is an opinion, Mr. Pidle. You have your professional opinion?
Yeah, my professional opinion is, as I think I responded to it in our last governance committee meeting, is that the intent of this policy is simply not to disallow individuals from being passionate about their cause, their cases, their perspectives. But when those actions start to interfere with the governance of the region, potentially impact the abilities of other members of the board to do their roles, complete their roles in a proficient manner, that's when this policy comes into place.
Thank you. Director Morrison, do you have many more on your list?
I do, actually. There's an item in here that says that, and it's a must word. And, this is a craft and a calling for some folks. And I believe it's in regards to 3.2.5. And it is where an individual must disclose information. Now, it has happened on more than a couple of occasions where I've been in possession of information that I consider very carefully and decide to choose or not choose in the heat of debate and discussion around this table. And that is part of my judgment and responsibility. And according to this policy, if there's something that I think I might use, that it must be disclosed to every other member in the CAO. That puts a chill on me being effective in my conducting of my business around this table, and I don't think it's appropriate for this policy. If there is something that is of, that's pertinent to a debate and discussion, and yes, absolutely distribute it to your colleagues, make sure that staff are aware of it. But when I may have something that is been provided to me, and I'm not necessarily, I don't want to be in a position where I'm breaching the code of conduct because of information I may or may not use. And so that's a consideration. And I'm gonna wrap up with the fact that we're now 19 pages. And I look at this document and I wish there was a way to make it simpler, clearer, because I would assume that this would have to be made part of an election package for potential candidates. And I look at this and think that we've gone from 3 pages to 19 pages. And for those of us that have already been elected and sit around this table and are doing this, creating this document for ourselves, I almost said we're doing it to ourselves. I think this will put a chill on people stepping up and running for office. If this is the expectation that of the organization and of what a person is deemed to have to sign or agree to as part of a policy, I think people will take a look at this when they're reading through their candidate package and will go, sorry, no, I'm not. Look at all we subject ourselves to already, and then I'm going to subject myself to this. I don't see this as as enhancing democracy and enhancing participation. I see it as a chill, and I'm not going to support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. Mr. Paido, I think you had a question about the sharing the information.
Yeah, so just for the benefit of the committee here, 325, and I want to make sure that we're clear on, you mentioned, okay, so 326, information obtained by any member which is likely to be used in a board or political debate must be provided to all their members and the CAO. That is pulled from best practice approach. When we started crafting this policy, the direction was provided to craft it against Nanaimo's bylaw, and that actually is pulled from there. So.
Thank you. And I just wanted to remind people that, you know, this process, I think, has been pretty good in terms of working through the documents. I think staff have done a great job of listening to us and trying to respond. I think there is a difference of opinion at the board or at this committee that, you know, is important to be heard. But in the end, I think the important piece is this is a future document that will be revised over time, things that will work and won't work. And that we have to, we are obligated to, we're mandated to have something forward to the government about this. And if it's meeting the intent of what we're doing right now and it's providing direction for our future, knowing that it can be amended, and I believe we have direction in this that'll be revised, looked at in 1 year.
I believe that is the case, yeah.
Right, okay. In that case, then I'll be looking for any other changes that people are looking for, any changes that you just noted that you need to make right now?
Thank you. The only other thing that I would suggest is after having reviewed it again this morning and in discussion with the CAO under the definition, proposed definition of vexatious, I'll note that, and I'm just going to pull it up here so I don't tell you a lie. It states, means a complaint that is one that is pursued regardless of its merits solely to harass, annoy, subdue somebody, something that is unreasonable, without foundation, frivolous, repetitive, burdensome, or unwarranted. So upon looking at it again this morning, I just wanted to discuss the term regardless of its merits. So what that might do then in second review is that it may make people feel as though that even if there is merit, they shouldn't be bringing forward if it's deemed vexatious. So we may want to pull that language out.
So what would you recommend next? I think this has to get approved to some degree now, and then it would come to the board?
Correct. My recommendation is that it's approved at the committee level, and then we move it forward to the board with the recommendation that 1.2.16 remove the terminology regardless of its merits.
Okay, and would you also be able to include the word shunning?
In which clause again? I believe it was in bullying. On the direction of the committee, I can do such, yes.
Okay, all right. So hearing that, is there, Director Morrison? We're wrapping up soon, so.
Yeah, I understand, but we've included the definition of vexatious complaint, and I didn't see anywhere in how a vexatious complaint was going to be addressed. Is there a provision where a complaint is initially brought to the CAO or CAO and chair? deemed to be vexatious and not pursued. We've defined it, but what are we going to do about it?
Through the chair to Director Morrison. So in terms of the definition of vexatious complaint and how we would determine whether or not a complaint is made from a vexatious perspective, that would be done likely through the Integrity Commissioner. And that individual would create an assessment as to whether or not the merits of the complaint are genuine, and if there is any perceived intent through the investigation to understand some sort of retaliation or vexatious action. So that's typically how it would be done in any investigation process, is that even if you were to look at our standards of call, or sorry, our respectful workplace policy for staff, there is always the propensity that vexatious complaints can come forward. In those scenarios, once again, typically that's already risen to the point where a third-party investigator, or in this case the Integrity Commissioner, would be brought into play. And that would be determined through the investigation report. Yes.
Thank you. And Director Stone?
Sorry,
I missed you.
Go ahead,
I
Director Wilson.
didn't see you on my list, Director Wilson.
Yeah, you did. See, here we go. Here's this demonstracy. I am never, ever, and never will be a stone-faced automaton, because you can see what I'm doing here. All of a sudden, we have this situation now where I'm on the list, and then I'm not on the list. So I totally agree.
We're over time.
I know, okay, all right.
Sorry, I
enough
hate
of that
to cut you
rant
off.
for the time being, but the whole point about it is that Director Morrison has brought forward a good point, that there are times when it is impossible not to demonstrate through movement of any kind, be it facial, be it hands, be it whatever, to make a point of what we're trying to make here. So we've got to be very careful as to how we put this into place here, because right now, here's my hands going. Always have done, always will do. I can't change that. And if that's offensive to somebody, then what can I do about it? As far as the shunning is concerned, that's another thing that I have a real concern with, because I've been accused of it before, and it's not necessarily intentional. If I walk past somebody and I'm sorry, I don't see them there because of whatever, because I have other things on my mind, whatever, it's not intentional. And this is where we have to be very careful here. Is it intentional, or is it one of those things that goes on? So I'm very concerned about that particular one. Having said that, what I've seen in the report so far, as I said, I'm prepared to move it, is still on the board. Thank you.
And wrap up, Director Stone.
I'll pass.
I thought you were making a motion. Are you making a motion? Seconding? Do we have a motion?
Chair, I've had my hand up
Oh,
for
sorry.
a while.
Last speaker if we can, because we are pushing the next meeting
you.
way back.
Thank you. Last speaker. I forget what the expression is, but I think that it's almost like a too many cooks in the kitchen has happened with this report. And I know that staff has done a good job at like incorporating every single thing that people have said. We almost should have like debated each thing that was added or something, because I agree this document's like way too long, way too out of hand. Now there's expressions or words being introduced. I don't even know what they mean. So I'm like, what does that mean when you do that to a person? What I think it's that we should almost trust staff to take this document and make it a 5-page document, and we should have the choice at the board to choose one or the other, because this has just gone like way out of proportion. And I agree on every point that Director Morrison made and Director Wilson, and towards the what we're portraying to the public and to the commissions and to people joining. And why should we look at this in another year? Like, I'm tired of talking about it already. Like, we should just be done with this and move on with our term. So, if people support that, that's the only idea I have, is that we ask staff to come back with a one or the other, and just a clear, concise, very simple, because it's all up for interpretation anyway, and it will always be up to the commissioner and to the board. So, that's what I would like to see help us get out of the weeds here.
Did you want to comment before I comment?
Through the chair to Director Acton, just be cognizant of the timelines. So we do need to make a decision prior to the 23rd.
Thank you for that. And I think we started a process. We've asked staff to follow the process. Staff have brought back multiple revisions of this. We've had many times to kick this. I think all opinions are very important here. And how this plays out is going to be something that we'll learn over the next year, and that's why the revision is important from my perspective. But ultimately, this is a tool. It isn't something to control you or to manage you. It's a tool that gives us an avenue for good governance, a tool that allows us to be good neighbors and make good decisions from that. And so I think as much as it's hard, because we've asked staff to do one thing and now I'm hearing some other things, I think we need to move forward, give something to the government, live with this document for a while. We may not need to revisit. Maybe it'll work out, maybe it won't, but that's the future. So I looked for a motion to accept this with those revisions, moved by Ms. Director Wilson, seconded by Director Nicholson. All in favor? No, I don't vote. Oh, see, we have all the voting members. All those in favor? And opposed? And we have opposed Director Nicholson and Director Acton. Morrison, sorry, and Acton, Director Acton, sorry. Sorry, I get my, it's early in the day. So, Miss Ferguson.
Thank you. You just need a motion to adjourn.
And a seconder, and all in favor, any opposed? Motion carried.